If you make somebody believe they found infinite youth or limitless energy or free money, they're going to use it. They're going to use it again and again and again. And as we reach and we're hurtling towards the climax of this fourth turning, it's no surprise that this is becoming more and more in our face, and it's becoming the answer for everything. So I don't think it's going to end well. Hello, this is Mike Preston at New Harbor Financial Group. It's Thursday, June 6th, 2024. And here, like we are every week, we want to share some data and some insight. And that's our purpose for these videos, is so that we can educate you, and hopefully things are a little less confusing out there, because certainly the world's a confusing place right now, and it's hard to tell what's real, particularly in the monetary system and the economic world. And so that's what we're talking about. Please remember to subscribe down below, comment on the video. We do read them. Reach out to us. In the bio, there's a link. You can reach out to us, connect with us. We're happy to speak with you, do a portfolio review, whatever you want. We're here for you. So thanks for watching. Today, I want to talk about the gold standard and why there was a gold standard, why there's not a gold standard. In part 2 of this video, next week, we'll talk a little bit about what our predictions are for the future, whether the gold standard will come back, or what alternative systems there might be out there. But I'd like to start with a little bit of history about what is a gold standard. If you're feeling confused by all of this, and if it's hard to tell what's real, you're definitely not alone. I feel that way sometimes. So because we've come so far off of reality and, for instance, the gold standard, that there are no limits seemingly to what we can do from a financial perspective, but I strongly believe that there are limits. Let's talk about first the history of the gold standard. By 1834, the United States fixed the price of gold at $20.67 per ounce. It stayed there for almost 100 years. So in 1834, $20.67 an ounce, all the way to 1933, the price was the same. Really, it was the pressures of World War I that started to put the strain on the gold standard. World War I was a very, very difficult war, the so-called war to end all wars. And really the unfinished business, or the ramifications, or the aftermath of World War I, really led to World War II, in my opinion. But major economies were buckling under the debt from World War I. And literally, there's nothing more destructive or inflationary that mankind can do other than create wars. So World War I was a major challenge. And so a lot of countries were facing the temptation, I think, to come off the gold standard because they wanted to basically expand their money supplies. But they had this pesky thing called the gold standard. In 1931, Britain departed from the gold standard. And in 1933, President FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, nationalized gold held by private citizens, so-called confiscated gold. It became and this was really, if you remember, this is the beginning of the Great Depression. So it was a matter of national emergency that gold had to be confiscated, that we had to ring fence gold. And you got to remember, we were on the gold standard back then, right? Today, we're not. A lot of people ask us today, do you think they'll confiscate gold? I don't think so. Once the cat was out of the bag and Pandora's box was open, and we literally inflated the money supply exponentially since, you'd have to admit that the whole thing was relatively a sham to go back to the gold standard. But back then in 1933, when we were on the gold standard, FDR said, we're going to confiscate your gold. I don't see that happening again. In 1946, Bretton Woods happened after World War II. And between 1946 and 1971, major economic countries operated under the Bretton Woods system. So during that time, almost every country settled their international balances in US dollars, but we promised the US government would redeem other countries' holdings in dollars for gold at fixed rates. So if Saudi Arabia or Japan held some dollars, we promised them that we will give you a certain number of gold coins or gold bars for that currency. That existed all the way up until 1971. In 1971, President Nixon, August 15th, 1971, President Nixon abolished the gold standard, realizing that it was just too limiting, too constraining. And so we came completely off the gold standard in 1971. And ever since, ironically, I was born in 1971. It's amazing how fast time flies. It seems so long ago now. And it was 53 years ago. Since that time, money supply has expanded. exponentially, almost without bound. And frankly, I think that once that happened, we couldn't go back. And that's why we have the issues that we've got today. Our debt is increasing at an exponential rate. It's up close to 34 trillion. It's going up by 2 to 3 trillion a year. That's without another pandemic. That's without a recession. That's certainly without a war. And so in the late 70s, mid to late 70s, a lot of folks became very, very concerned about inflation, and there was a big move to go back to the gold standard, but it never really happened. And then Paul Volcker, the Federal Reserve head in the 1980s, broke the back of inflation. And since then, it's just been an expansion of the money supply. And then it's been just continued intervention by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. On October 19th, 1987, we had the largest one-day drop in the stock market ever. It was a 25% drop essentially in one day. And Alan Greenspan, who was essentially brand new on the job, came in and started spraying money at the problem. And it's really been this way ever since. And the only way that this can continue is to have no limits on the money supply. So there's been all kinds of complaints and problems that we've talked about over the years here, not the least of which is unfairness, wealth disparity, and really no limits on government spending. If you make somebody believe they found infinite youth or limitless energy or free money, they're going to use it. They're going to use it again and again and again. And as we reach and we're hurtling towards the climax of this fourth turning, it's no surprise that this is becoming more and more in our face, and it's becoming the answer for everything. So I don't think it's going to end well. We'll talk about some predictions in part 2 of this video. But first, let me just kind of show you something that I recently got from a friend. We were out on the West Coast on a road show, and a friend of mine handed me this silver certificate right here. So this was a silver certificate that was issued, or is a silver certificate issued by the United States Treasury between 1878 and 1964. And basically, this is when we were on the gold standard, or at least partially on the gold standard. So you could walk into a bank and you could hand them this silver certificate. This one happens to be series 1957. You could hand them this and they would give you a certain amount of silver. This was abolished or ended in 1964. And it's no surprise, and it's not a coincidence that at the same time, silver was removed from our coins. So if you look at pre-1965 coins, that is US coins from 1964 and earlier, they will have 90% silver. After that, we took the silver out of coins, we abolished the silver certificate, and it was only 7 years later that we came completely off the gold standard. And I don't think it's been a great thing. So we'll talk a little bit more about this next week, what we think the ramifications are. I can tell you that now the ramifications have been, in my opinion, there's no checks and balances. There's no system to make sure that we're kept honest. And basically, it's been a race with major world central banks against each other to see how far they could push this system. From the Bank of Japan to the European Central Bank to the United States Federal Reserve, we have all been completely off the reservation with what we've done, since there's no strings attached anymore. There's no rules. So what's it going to mean? We'll talk more about that next week. For now, please do like the video, subscribe to our channel, reach out to us through the link in the bio. We love that you're watching us. We are happy and pleased and grateful to do the job we're doing. Please tune in next week and please reach out to us. Until next time, this is Mike Preston. Thank you very much.